Are you sitting comfortably, John?
I am.
Okay, theme for today that we just agreed. Let's start with a little story. I was at an event last week. It was a launch event in London. It was a launch of what they call it, it's the Centre for Enterprise Artificial Intelligence. Doesn't quite matter who was involved, but it was like a 2-3 hour morning event doing the launch. And there was an introduction, and there was a keynote speaker, and there were a few other speakers. Um, to my mind, not a great deal of content, but then it was a launch. But then the best part of the morning was a panel session that probably went for about 30 minutes, and they had 5 experts from different backgrounds, different areas of expertise, doing pretty much a standard panel session. But it was a good little panel session. And there were a few questions at the end. And then there was a buffet lunch, which of course with these events are always the best part because that's where the real conversation takes place. And so I was looking forward to that. But of course, during the event itself, there was a time for maybe 3 or 4 questions, but there was no conversation. And so you know me, I was sitting there thinking, how could this have been made even just a little bit more conversational? There were a lot of really top people in the room that I would love to have talked to from universities and consultancies and what have you. And I thought, wouldn't it have been neat to have turn the panel session into like a modified open space where they put those 5 experts at different tables and allowed people to wander around and for say 2 minutes, no, not even 2 minutes, a minute, they could have explained their area of expertise and what they wanted to discuss at the tables, and then people could have moved around and had that discussion at the tables, and that wouldn't have been too difficult to do. But I kind of wonder what your thoughts might be at an event like that, whether other ways of doing it, but then maybe more generally, and again, not just at conferences or launch events, within organizations, how do you get away from the death by PowerPoint? How do you get away from panels and you know anything in the event that is utterly, totally non-conversational?
Yeah, it pops up a
Thoughts?
lot for me. In prep for our chat, I went on ChatGPT really quick and said, give me 5 ideas, or please provide 5 ideas for a podcast about conversational leadership today. I know I read all five. It actually gave me seven. And number three stood out, and it said, micro moments of leadership. And I
Mm-hmm.
think this is close to what you're talking about, is this moment of in the room, is there something I can do to turn things more conversational?
What as a
Um,
participant?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so a little bit different to what I'm asking, but
It's
yes, yeah, yeah, okay.
similar. And I'm thinking like, yeah, in town halls or in meetings or yeah, as a participant. But then of course, yeah, as a designer of an event, is there something I can do to see
Yeah, yeah,
the readiness for conversation? And then I don't know, I guess one of these things I've learned is, yeah, in all the learning and development and trainings and education type work I'm lucky to do. Um, yeah, I've often pushed pretty hard to move towards conversation and said things like, oh, the readings can be done before or after we're together, and let's focus on learning from each other in the room.
uh-huh.
And I don't know, I don't know, maybe it's one of these things I'm trying to do in general is like be less divisive and more integrating. So like, is the question something like, how do you balance? Because didn't you say the best part was the panel? I think I heard you say like
The
the
best
best
part
part.
was the panel, yes.
So there's
There
something
was
like,
quite a good keynote talk. I mean, those can often be good, but the best part was the panel
so that, but
because
then I bet there was
there
also,
was a lot of different expertise there.
but there was also, but are you saying like almost like zero conversation in the room then? It was
There was zero conversation in
the,
the room,
so
and I was sitting next to a really interesting guy again, very senior guy in I think, in one of the consultancies, and I would love to have had a conversation with him, but
Mm.
didn't
It
get a
just
chance.
wasn't there. So that to me is that's the out of balance then. If it's 100% either way, maybe 100% conversation is too much, and maybe 100% presentation is too much.
It's getting the
So
balance, yes.
yeah, and that's where I'm saying these micro moments of leadership. Imagine being a participant, I guess like you were in that event. You can you walk up to a person who has an agenda and has people in a room and there's a plan in place and you're already in the flow of the event. Can you walk up and say, "Hey, I'd like to change this to open space," or "Hey,
It's a
can
bit
we
late then.
yeah, it seems like it'd be a bit late, but I don't know, maybe that's exactly what the world needs.
Interestingly, the key organizer of the event knows my cafes well, and I've run several cafes for him. But I think when people go into these sort of events, they don't really, you know, they don't really think outside of the box. They think about, okay, how have these events always been run, and that's what they go for. I was just thinking again about the guy next to me. Um, if they'd just given us even 3 or 4 minutes where they
Mm.
said, okay, turn to the person next to you and introduce yourselves, or turn to the person next to you, because well, we had introduced ourselves, but that was it. But just turn to each other and have a conversation about blah blah for 5 minutes.
So, okay, then
Even that would have satisfied me.
maybe that sparks the question then. Is it because my mind often goes to process, like you're saying, just give me 3 minutes, give me a step, give me a prompt question that everybody in the room can talk about.
Yeah,
Is it, let's go people process technology. Is it about like I think when you're saying like this is how people have always done it, is that a culture thing? Is that a
yeah,
people?
it's a
It
culture
just
thing, it's a habit thing. It's a To my mind, it's a non-thinking thing.
so then does conversational leadership need to, I don't know, raise awareness of different options? And then, of course, process. Do we need to, of course, we've got the Knowledge Cafe. You mentioned open space. There's all the liberating structures, million other process options we have. And then if the group is large enough, maybe even if they're small, you probably need some kind of technology to support polling or votes or,
Yeah, I know I wouldn't go that far. Well, you could go that far. I mean, the argument against my idea of an open space or modified open space is this was in a traditional. Um, there were only about 100 people there. But it was in a traditional, it's pretty much level lecture theatre. Um, so they couldn't have done it in there. But there was a big room next door where we had lunch. Um, you could have done it there. So you'd have had to have moved people out of the lecture theatre into the larger room, which would have taken a little bit of time and a little bit of organizing. And so you might just say, "Oh, this is too much. This is too much hassle."
did you have a feel for, so you wanted more conversation. Were you the only one? Do you have a feel for like how many people in the room would have also preferred some chat?
No idea. Maybe they
Yeah,
wouldn't.
and
Maybe they
maybe they
wouldn't.
wouldn't. And that
A lot of them were academics, so maybe they were more than happy with the
mm,
lecture style.
panels and presentations, and they're thinking maybe conversations between like after the event later. So that goes takes me back to like the technology. Is it on us, conversational leadership, to like make it a almost an expected poll question, either before an event or right at the start of an event to ask at the crowd, ask the audience. Um, Uh, do you want 100% conversation and zero presentation? Do you want 100% presentation and zero conversation? Or where do you want the balance? And just
But
ask.
typically, people want to be in control of these events, so that's never gonna happen. I don't think.
No?
I don't think so. I mean, people were very engaged. It was a typical buffet lunch. It was a very large room. There were easy chairs and things around. Looking around the room, pretty much everybody was engaged in conversation, and I had some good conversations over lunch. And it's the typical thing. It's really easy when you're standing in the queue for the food, you turn to the person and you just say, hey, nice layout of food, isn't there? You're in the coffee queue, where have you come from today? It hasn't got anything to do with the event, but you just open the conversation. You're coming back from the bathroom. So what did you make of the event this morning? It's so easy to do, to kick off the conversation. And yeah, I think all the conversations I got engaged in, I actually started. But that was, I say, that was over lunch. It wasn't really bringing it into the
What
event itself.
what can you, because I always love your words. What words would you say about what's missing? What's the problem if an event like the one you were just at?
But to me, the problem is that people don't think of it. It's the way it's always been done.
But
It's
then
it's
like
it's 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 very rare that any sort of one-off events are made conversational in my experience.
but then after that, so like they don't think of it, got it. So because they don't think of it, it doesn't happen.
Doesn't
Even
happen,
if
yeah.
they thought of it though, what would push like a designer of an event to say we need a lot more conversation, like to have them think about what is the problem that they're trying to solve. If there's no conversation, that
Yeah,
means what? Not enough learning or not enough connection or what?
not enough connection, not enough engagement. Um, I would have thought. I'm not too sure, if you did a poll beforehand and asked people what they would like to see in the event, whether people would actually say, "Hey, we'd like to see more
Yeah,
conversation," because we're also used to going into events where there's no conversation.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I don't know, even for me, I love it. I much prefer the conversation. And yet, yeah, if I was presented that poll, yeah, it's just easier, right? It's just
yeah,
I don't know. I can
I mean,
rest if
my
I just
standard
watch.
technique for a long time. I mean, I don't give many talks at conferences these days, but what I always used to do, you've heard me say this, and you've seen me do it, and I think you do it as well, is if I've got a 40-minute slot for a presentation, and they say, well, okay, 30 minutes for presentation, 10 minutes for Q&A. I'll do 20 minutes presentation, 10 minutes for conversation, where I just say, okay, before I take questions, turn, turn to each other in twos and threes where you're sitting. This will work in a lecture theatre, and have a conversation about what I've had to say, and then I'll take some questions. And the great thing about that is if for any reason I overrun by 5 minutes, there's still 15 minutes left. Um, and again, if there's a lot of conversation, I let them go on a bit longer. And I remember once at a conference, the speaker after me didn't turn up. So, and I cut things short. So I had like maybe getting on for an hour to fill. Maybe it wasn't as much as now. Maybe it was an extra 40 minutes. And I just got people talking and asking questions, and that time just flew by. I mean, it was a really engaged session, and I thought I was going to struggle to keep things alive for that extra length of time. It's not
Turn it to
difficult to do.
conversation. It's easy. I've had really good luck with putting people, like you say, if you're in person, just turn to the person next to you, or
Yeah,
maybe a little group of three in a Zoom or anything online. You just do breakouts and put them in groups of two, three, four people. But my trick is, um, we now have time for some questions. But what I'd like you to do is go into a small group and have a conversation about what's the most relevant, important question that you would like to ask or that we all need to talk about as a group. And
that's a
it's
nice one.
that prompt like helps the group have a conversation about whatever questions they have. They often can answer their own questions
Oh yes, yeah,
in that small breakout, and then they bring something, I don't know, a little more impactful
that's right.
to the
Yeah,
full group.
yeah.
You know,
No, that's
and they've
nice.
sort of they've
I've
pressured.
never actually done that, but I really like that. So in this launch, that would have been very easy to do. No changing of rooms, no real extra time. Just give people just 5 minutes. That's all you need.
Ooh, what about this? I did have an experience recently. This one's maybe a little bit tough. Um, uh, Big long training event. Um, I had to disappear for a little while, and um, yeah, this one's really tough to kind of share, but okay. Um, what happened was the hour that I had to miss for this group of people, uh, one person went into presentation mode and shared the presentation. And in fact, they did at the beginning. They took a vote, exactly what we're talking about. I remember now. I found out after. Hey, would everybody here like to have a conversation, or would like to everybody have to have a presentation? And it was a split by one vote. One more person voted for presentation.
Oh my God.
But then listen, after the event was over, for the entire long event, two people gave feedback saying everything was great except that 1 hour of presentation. I voted for conversation and it didn't work for me. And I thought, wow, okay, so maybe you and I are not alone is one thing.
But I think lot of the problem is that a lot of people actually don't want conversation because you can be lazy. You don't have to. You don't have to engage. You can sit back and your mind can wander, or you can listen. It's yeah, you can be lazy effectively.
It's so I don't think you and I have ever talked about this, but like, I remember being young and going to parties. And they always say like you have more fun at a party the more you put into it, the more you're like
Uh-huh.
whereas if you stand against the wall and just, talk to no one or talk to one person, you're probably going to go home that night and say that was a terrible party, right? And so like I think maybe conversation is a similar thing. It's like I sort of I don't know, is it almost human nature to be inclined a little bit to be I don't know, some percentage of people certainly like almost want the party to come to them, the conversation to come to them. What
Yeah,
is that? But
yeah.
how do we, I don't know, find more balance? I'm not saying like everybody needs to
No,
jump in, but
it's balance. It's absolutely that. But it's well, when it comes to the events, it seems to me that the important thing is that the organizers think about it. I know the big knowledge management event in Dublin certainly last year they put a lot of effort into thinking about how to make it interactive, and I think they're doing the same this year. Um, but it's taken 20 years of knowledge management for a lot of the organizers to get there.
yeah, so even in collaboration, conversational disciplines, it's still so much tradition, so much this is how it's always been done, this is the only way it can be done. Um, it'll be separate, but maybe it'll spark something for us. It reminds me of hierarchies. Like, the vast majority of every organization in the world has been structured as a hierarchy. And so trying anything else is like, well, why? Like, we know all about this, and we know there's pros and cons, but what is it like the devil you know versus the devil you don't? Might be the same thing in conversation. Yeah, I just expect to go to an event and see six PowerPoint presentations, and that's it. Like, why would I take a risk and do something different?
I've probably told you this story years ago. One of my first cafes I ran in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, for IBM, and they had clients in the room from different organizations. And basically, somebody from IBM gave a talk about a new product. And then I was going to run a knowledge cafe, which I introduced the cafe. And they stayed at the tables they had sat at when they came into the room. They had their conversations at the tables. And then I stopped the conversation and said, now could a few people from each table change tables? Guess what? Nobody, not one person moved.
Yep.
And before I could do anything, my IBM host said to me, he said, David, he said, I understand the culture, he said. I'll make them move. And I thought, oh, this is going to be interesting because
Mm.
I wasn't too sure how he was going to make them move. So he said, could everyone stand up, please? So they all stood up. He said, now, could a few of you move tables? What do you think happened?
Nobody moved?
Nobody moved. And some bright spark in the front row said to me, or said to us, David said earlier that he never made anybody do what they didn't want to do in a cafe. We don't want to move. And I said, okay, you don't have to move. And they didn't move. And I thought about it later and again talked to somebody, a few people about it. And I'm pretty sure of the reason. When they came in, they sat with their companies. So there was Malaysia Airlines at one table, Malay Bank at another, somebody else at another. They were very comfortable sitting with the people that they knew. They really didn't want to go and talk to complete strangers.
Mm,
And I'd given them the option of not moving,
mhm,
so they didn't want to move.
mhm.
And again, I think that's a big part of it. In some cultures, I mean, I think it's more prevalent in some cultures than others. But
I think some discomfort is almost required for learning. I don't know
yes,
if discomfort, I think I have a hunch it is. I think some discomfort is required for deep connection. Um, and so was it Jerry Seinfeld, one of our American comedians said, I can't deliver it as well as him, but he said something like, public speaking is the number one fear higher than death.
yes,
People would rather be in the coffin
they'd
than
rather
giving a
die.
eulogy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I've heard that.
Yeah. So like I think that maybe plays out in the rooms where yeah, they'd rather stay with their company and but see that I don't know, is that discomfort? Is that learning? Is that I think we've talked about this before, like intrinsic motivator. What I'm trying to get underneath a little bit. Like, what is it that designers struggle, participants
Mm,
struggle? Um, like you said, even people that, dare I say, know better, people that have practiced this for a long time would still design events that have very little conversation. And by the way, we're talking about events to make it easy. I think we're also talking about meetings inside companies.
oh, yes. I mean, we haven't touched on that.
Yeah.
Yes, very true. I mean, I think a little bit of it, for some people at least, is actually lack of curiosity.
Okay.
At meetings and well, at conferences and events, I look around and I see what appear to be interesting people, maybe by the way they're dressed, their 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 manner. I think I'd like to have a conversation with that person. Yeah. Who are they? Where are they from? Um, I usually always do it. I mean, I had a medical checkup yesterday, and the uh, the nurse who took my blood clearly wasn't English. And I'm always hesitant about asking people where they're from, but I can never I can never stop myself. So we had a great conversation. She was from Romania and just talking about the difference between Romania and the UK and her family and blah 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 blah. Um, that's just so easy to do, um, rather than just well, say nothing, which I suspect a lot of
Uh,
people do.
I always love your stories. I have a real story from you from a client dinner I was at in person. I don't remember, a few days ago. And I was there with my boss. He traveled down from Boston. There were 8 or 10 of us at the table, pretty good size. We ended up, because it was a little bit too big, we had a big long table. We kind of split into two groups of five, sort of. Maybe it was 8 of us and it was 4 and 4. Anyway, it was two different conversations. And this is just dinner, right? There's no PowerPoint, this is just informal, but professional dinner setting. So I'm on one side talking to these 4 people, and he's on the other side talking to the 4 other people. And then there came a moment where I think dessert had just come out or we had just ordered it. Anyway, there was a moment where people were standing up and going to the bathroom, right? There's a moment where things are shifting around in the room. You know what he did? He was the only one that did it. He stood up, and I thought he was going to the bathroom. He stood up and he went and took someone else's chair while they were in the bathroom
Yeah,
so that he could talk to the other side.
yeah, yeah. What
Simplest little move in the
one of the
world.
things I always do at events like that, where there's usually the long tables, the worst place to sit is at the end
Yeah,
because basically your scope of conversation is between 3 people.
yeah,
Sit in the middle. You've got 2 either side and 3 in front of you. You go from
yeah,
3 to 5.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing worse, nothing worse than the dinner being trapped on the end of the table with three people who are not conversationalists, or for whatever reason are totally boring, and you've got to work really hard to try to make a conversation. You stand a better chance sitting in the middle somewhere.
And so I go back to like, okay, so then you've got your move before it even like try not to sit at the end. By the way, when we arrived, our seats were already chosen for us. So like, everybody else was there. We were the last two to get there. Um, but like, I know that. I know to like, what do they call it? Like work the room. You walk up
Yes,
and
work the room, which is a
like, go
horrible
go walk
phrase.
around. And part of that, like, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with. Maybe it's that discomfort again, but it worked for him, and I think it worked for the people because like the smiles and the laughter and the the conversation was different after
Yeah,
he sort of rotated, for lack of a better word. So like I'm still getting underneath like what caused him to do that? Why is that so rare? Part of me even thinks, what if everyone at the table did that? What if we all went and grabbed a different seat? Like
yeah.
what would the opposite look like? I don't know.
Shall we stop there?
Sure.
Over time. We should talk about this again rather than conferences and things, actually specifically in internal meetings, because
Yeah.
things are a little bit different there.
Yeah. And I'll try to bring up prior clients rather than current clients because there's so much I could talk about current. I guess both are risky, but sure. Yes.
Okay, John.